If there's one thing life has taught me, it's that the hottest moments come when we least expect them. And when I say hot, I'm not talking about anything, okay? I'm talking about those situations that make us lose our breath, that move us deep, down in a way that's difficult to explain. Do you want to know? Let me tell you a story, one that turned my life upside down. I'm Anna, over 40, with a life that on the outside seems normal, but inside, there are some curves and detours that no one imagines. I'm married to Ethan, an incredible man who completes me, but he brought a bonus in the package, Noah, his son from his first marriage. Noah is just over 20 years old. That kind of polite, discreet boy, but with a hint of mystery. And until then, we barely spoke to each other. Till that weekend, when Ethan had to go away, it was just another Saturday. I turned on my favorite playlist, picked up the bucket, and started my cleaning, my private therapy. I love the freedom it gives me, you know? But then I felt something different. A look. Noah was there, leaning against the living room door, watching me. But it wasn't just any look. It was intense, focused. It burned. I felt a shiver go up my spine. My entire body noticed. I tried to disguise it, pretend it was nothing. Only inside me, full blast. Have you ever felt this? That tension in the air where the slightest movement feels like a scream? I tried to focus on the music, on cleaning, but the energy in that environment had changed. There was no going back. Noah was there, silent, but present in a way that left me breathless. With each second, the atmosphere became more charged. Wasn't something planned, nor something I fully understood, but it was impossible to ignore. The simplest moments have a way of catching us off guard, right? As if the universe was conspiring to mess everything up. I just didn't imagine that moment would become a turning point in my life. My family, in fact, was never conventional. Ethan, my husband, is my safe haven. But with it came the challenge of creating a connection with Noah. I'll be honest, until that weekend, this seemed like an impossible mission. Noah was always polite, discreet, almost invisible in his routine. But there was something about him that left me with a flea behind my ear. It was as if he hid a side that no one knew about. And me, I never tried to force anything. I thought it was okay to live in that bubble of distant and respectful coexistence. But that Saturday showed that the bubble could burst at any moment. And what came next? Oh, it was pure fire. Ethan was always on the run, traveling back and forth for work. So it was nothing new for me and Noah to be home alone. But that weekend, something was different. Maybe it was because he was more present, or because for the first time, my eyes were seeing Noah differently. He was no longer the shy boy I met years ago. It transformed. A man with a presence that made the room boil. Saturday morning started like any other. Ethan texted goodbye from the airport while I drank coffee in the kitchen. Everything is normal, right? Till Noah came down the stairs. He arrived in silence, as he always did. But the way he entered the room, it changed everything. Was something about his posture, the way he looked at me. It was lighter, more confident. And let's be honest, it wasn't just respect in his eyes. There was something more, something that gave me goosebumps. And that's when I realized, as much as I didn't want to admit it, there was a connection between us. It wasn't obvious, but it was there. A silent solitude we both shared. Not connection. Well, it would open doors that I didn't even know existed. After coffee, I did what I always do when I'm alone. I put on my favorite playlist, loud music, good beat, and off I went to clean the room, dancing among the furniture, almost forgetting the world. That always made me feel alive, free. At least, that's what I thought. Until I realized someone was watching me. Noah was on the couch, quiet, just watching me. But the way he looked, it was impossible to ignore. It wasn't the look of a son at a stepmother, you know? No, it was intense, charged, as if he was deciphering every curve of my body. I continued cleaning, pretending nothing was wrong. But inside, I was exploding. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier, and that look of his followed my every movement. It wasn't uncomfortable, you know? In fact, a part of me liked it. I liked knowing he was paying attention. I liked the way he looked at me. That's when it happened. I tripped over the table leg, something silly, but his reflex was quick. Noah got up and held my arm, steady so I wouldn't fall. His touch, his touch. It was warm, safe, but at the same time, intimate. It made my entire body light up. We stayed there, glued, for a few seconds. The silence between us was almost deafening. He didn't say anything. Me either. But in that look, in that moment, it seemed like everything was being said. It was there, at that moment, that the penny dropped. Something was happening. Something that I couldn't control, nor did I want to admit, but that I could no longer ignore. After that stumble, the air between me and Noah felt charged. It wasn't just the touch. It was the way he looked at me, a look that said everything, that words would never dare. When he released me, slowly, almost as if he didn't want to, I could still feel the warmth of his fingers on my arm. It was as if that touch had left an invisible mark. I tried to resume cleaning, but who said I could? My head was a mess. Every sound, every movement seemed to scream what I was trying to silence. And Noah? Well, he wasn't the same either. Instead of going back to the couch, he did something unexpected. He offered to help me. He picked up the vacuum cleaner while I folded some clothes in the living room. Normal, right? But every time our eyes met, it was as if the room became smaller, tighter, hotter. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was provocative. As if a silent game was starting there and none of us knew where it was going. After a while, we were both kneeling on the floor, going through a box of old things. Our shoulders touched, and it was like a shock went straight through my body. Snapshot. Overwhelming. I looked at him. And do you know what I saw? The same thing I was feeling. It was desire in his eyes, mixed with a hint of hesitation. It was as if he was waiting for me to take the next step, or stop everything there. There were seconds that seemed like an eternity. My mind was screaming at me to get up, leave, pretend nothing was happening. But at the same time, my body wanted to stay there, feeling, teasing, enjoying every second of that tension. It didn't work anymore. I needed to breathe, clear my head, anything. I went to the kitchen, trying to look casual, like there wasn't a hurricane inside me. I grabbed 2 cups and decided to make iced coffee, hoping it would distract me. But he came right behind, silent, gift, and with that look that seemed to undress me from the inside. Do you accept? Kai asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded, saying nothing, but it was in the way he took the cup. Our fingers touched. It was quick, just a second, but it was enough to make my heart race as if I had run a marathon. That touch. It wasn't just a touch. It was an invitation. It was as if he was saying, "How long are you going to ignore this?" I knew that. From then on, there was no going back. The lines were being blurred. We sat on the couch, each holding our drink, but no one knew exactly what to say. The silence between us was heavy, full of meanings that neither of us had the courage to verbalize. I tried to break the mood. The house looked so different without Ethan, right? It was a casual attempt, but Noah's response, nothing casual. He smiled sideways, that smile that made me shiver. Yes, it seems, but maybe that's not so bad, he said, with a firmness that seemed to carry something hidden. The conversation started to flow, but not in the way I expected. Noah, usually so reserved, began to open his soul. He talked about how he always felt like he needed to keep things balanced, as if he was afraid of upsetting his father. And me. I stood there, listening, mesmerized, because, for the first time, I saw the real Noah. Someone who carried the same loneliness that I hid. With each word, the barriers between us crumbled. When I told him he could relax, that this was also his house, the way he looked at me, that look. It was as if he wanted to say something that was stuck, but didn't know how to let go. You know, Anna, sometimes I feel like I can just be myself. And we're like this. His words were like a whisper straight into my soul. It was no longer an ordinary conversation. It was something much deeper. Much more dangerous it was. At that moment that I knew what was happening between us could no longer be ignored. It wasn't just tension in the air. It was something alive, pulsating, something that we pretended not to feel, but that was there, getting stronger and stronger. After a silence that seemed to last an eternity, Noah finally spoke. Anna, there's something I need to say, but I don't know how. He looked away, looking at the cup as if it were going to give the answer. My heart raced. I knew what he was about to say would change everything. I tried to stay calm, but my Voice was shaky, Noah. You can tell me anything. I'm here. He looked up slowly, and what I saw in them hit me like a bolt of lightning. Fear, desire, and something I felt too. I feel something for you, ... Something I shouldn't feel, but I can't help it. Since I got to know you better, I realized that you are much more than just my father's wife. His every word was like a well-aimed blow. Strong, direct, and as much as I knew it was wrong, I couldn't help the heat that rose through my body upon hearing his confession, ... Single quotes I started to speak, but my voice just wouldn't come out. It was as if reason and desire were fighting a battle inside me, and I knew there was no way I could get out of this unscathed. He placed the cup on the table, the sound of it echoing in the silence of the room. Then he approached, hesitant, but at the same time with a determination that left me breathless. You don't need to say anything, Anna. I just wanted you to know how I feel. The sincerity in his voice was overwhelming, like a wave that swept me toward something I couldn't control. And the worst, I didn't want to fight it. Before I even understood what I was doing, my hand found his. It was a small gesture, but loaded with tension. I looked into Noah's eyes and knew right away there was no going back. Everything between us was exploding at that moment, breaking down any barrier that might have existed. Time seemed to stop. The silence around us was almost deafening, as if there were only me and him. Holding his hand seemed so simple, but the weight of that touch, oh, it was overwhelming. My chest rose and fell rapidly, and when our eyes met, I saw something that took my breath away. Desire and vulnerability mixed together in a whirlwind. Noah remained motionless for a moment. It was as if he was fighting an internal battle, deciding whether to take the next step or retreat. But then he made his choice. Without saying a single word, he approached slowly, like someone testing limits, but without ever taking his eyes off mine. I should back off. I knew that. But my hand squeezed his, giving silent permission. And when our lips finally met, ... it was pure electricity. My entire body seemed to awaken from a deep sleep. The kiss was soft, but carried an intensity that made the entire room seem to revolve around us. There was no sound. There was no world. There was nothing. Just him. Just that moment, Noah pulled away a little, his eyes fixed on mine as if looking for some kind of confirmation. My heart was racing, and I knew I had to say something, but the words, they just wouldn't come. Then, before he could hesitate, I was the one who pulled him back. This time the kiss was deeper, more committed, as if there was no longer any room for doubt. It was wrong, but it was so right. The heat of his body against mine, the way he held me, as if he wanted to protect me and lose me at the same time. It was everything. Everything I needed, even though I shouldn't have wanted it. That kiss wasn't just an act of passion. It was a point of no return. I knew that from then on, nothing would be the same. The world outside didn't matter anymore. The only thing that existed was Noah, and that moment that would change everything. Later, in my room, I tried to process what had happened. My mind was in chaos, divided between reliving every second of that kiss and the guilt that was beginning to weigh me down. I had crossed a line I never thought possible to cross. Noah also retreated to his room, but the silence between us was deafening. It wasn't an empty silence, it was full of everything we didn't say. And even with all the confusion in my head, one thing was certain. I wanted more. The guilt, the desire, the tension, everything seemed to mix together in a hurricane that consumed me. And that night, lying in bed, only one question dominated me. What comes after crossing the limit? Ethan arrived earlier than expected the next morning, bringing with him his usual routine, one that seemed impossible to resume after what happened. He kissed me as always, with the same calmness, without noticing the invisible tension that I was trying to hide. But Noah, Noah came downstairs and greeted his father casually, as if everything was normal. But the look he gave me took me apart. It was a loaded look, full of meanings that only the two of us understood. I spent the next few days trying to fight my own thoughts. How could something so wrong feel so right? How could we just continue living under the same roof, pretending nothing had happened? The connection between us wasn't something I could erase. It was something visceral that moved me in a way I had never felt before. I knew I needed to make a decision. put an end to that hurricane before it consumed us. But how? How do I stop? Something that seemed bigger than me, bigger than both of us. Finally, I worked up the courage to talk to Noah. My heart was in my hand when I went to him. Each step seemed to weigh a ton. When we met, the tension in the air was almost palpable. What happened between us was unique, Noah, but we need to leave it in the past. We need to move on. My words came out strong, but my heart was in pieces. He agreed. Noah nodded, but the sparkle in his eyes, oh, that sparkle broke me even more. It was pain mixed with acceptance, like he understood what I was saying, but hated every word. We decide together, preserve the family relationship. Do not exceed that limit again. It was the right choice. I knew that. But knowing didn't make things easier. What was between us wasn't something that could just disappear. This story, as confusing and overwhelming as it was, taught me something about myself. We are attracted to what challenges us, what shakes our foundations. But in the end, it's the choices we make that truly define us. And even if I chose to move on, that moment between me and Noah would remain etched in me. A living memory, one that time cannot erase. It's a mixture of guilt, desire, and longing. Back in the routine with Ethan, I did my best to look the same as before. But inside, I carried a part of me that belonged to Noah. And that part would always be there, hidden. Because sometimes what defines us is not what we experience, but what we decide to leave behind. And Noah was my biggest secret, my biggest challenge.